In the midst of escalating tensions in the Middle East, Israel finds itself on the brink of a critical decision with far-reaching consequences. As it prepares to strike Gaza in response to the brutal attacks by Hamas on October 7th, the choices made by Israel and the United States will have a profound impact on both nations and the global order they represent. While condemning the actions of Hamas is essential, the necessity for Israel to protect civilian lives during its response cannot be overstated. Is Israel on the verge of making a colossal mistake? And could it jeopardize the global order and the credibility of the United States on the international stage? The enduring crisis in Israel and Palestine, which spans decades, has captured global attention. However, its intricate history and the often perplexing terminology associated with it can make the situation seem overwhelming. This ongoing conflict involves occupied territories, discussions of a two-state solution, debates over apartheid, and a peace process that has faced numerous challenges. Additionally, it includes proscribed terrorist organizations, the Nakba, the influence of proxy militias, and concerns about the use of disproportionate force. But that's a long story, and you can get plenty of information about this issue from verified sources all over the internet. What's happening right now is that Israel, in the name of self-defense, after a staggering offensive by Hamas, has been launching a wave of airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Netanyahu has issued warnings to Palestinians in Gaza to get out of there now, as he has vowed to reduce Hamas hideouts to rubble. However, there is no escape for those in the blockaded territory. Now, we've got some serious issues to discuss regarding Israel and Gaza. It appears that Israel is breaking some important international rules that were set up in the Geneva Conventions. They did this by cutting off vital things like water, electricity, fuel, internet, and food to Gaza on October 11th. This action is considered unfair and punishes innocent people in Gaza. Even though they've restored water to some areas, most of Gaza is still suffering. On October 12th, the International Committee of the Red Cross mentioned that without power, hospitals in Gaza are turning into morgues. Also, Human Rights Watch reported that Israel used a dangerous substance called white phosphorus in Gaza and Lebanon. This substance can cause severe burns and long-lasting harm. Using it in places with lots of people breaks international laws. Now, what makes this situation even more interesting is how the United States is responding, or rather not responding. U.S. officials either can't or won't criticize Israel for these violations of international rules. This puts both the U.S. and Israel in a tough spot. But before we go further, let's make one thing clear. We don't support or agree with the violent actions that Hamas took against innocent Jewish civilians on October 7th. Those actions were terrible, and there's no excuse for them. Israel has the right to defend itself, but it must do so while following the rules and protecting innocent lives in Gaza. Political expert Ian Bremmer, who's been a voice of reason in this conflict, points out something crucial. Destroying Hamas might make Israel safer, but harming the lives of 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza would make Israel less safe. Protecting civilians is both a moral duty and in Israel's best interest. The United States is in a unique position to influence Israel right now. For decades, the U.S. has been Israel's biggest supporter, providing billions of dollars in military aid. But if American-made weapons are used in attacks that harm innocent people, the U.S. is supposed to stop supplying those weapons. Unfortunately, the U.S. doesn't always follow international rules when it comes to military support. This is where it gets tricky. The U.S. often criticizes other countries for breaking international laws, but it seems to stay quiet when Israel does the same. This double standard harms America's ability to uphold the international order. To illustrate this point, let's turn to Mehdi Hasan, a well-known broadcaster. He points out that the global South, which includes many countries outside the Western world, is paying attention to how the U.S. handles this situation. If the U.S. continues to ignore international rules, it will lose credibility and influence in the global South. This could make it harder for the U.S. to promote its ideas about a rules-based international system. So basically, the United States has a unique role to play in this situation because of its close relationship with Israel. But to maintain credibility and promote international rules, it must ensure that its allies, including Israel, follow those rules. The 2022 Civilian Harm Mitigation Response Action Plan is a significant legal framework that places U.S. security partners on par with U.S. forces when it comes to their legal obligations to minimize harm to civilians. This means that any nation receiving military support from the United States is bound by the same standards as the U.S. military itself when it comes to protecting civilian lives in conflict zones. This legal requirement is essential to ensure that any actions taken by U.S. allies align with international humanitarian laws. So basically, the United States has a unique role to play in this situation because of its close relationship with Israel. But to maintain credibility and promote international rules, it must ensure that its allies, including Israel, follow those rules. The 2022 Civilian Harm Mitigation Response Action Plan is a significant legal framework that places U.S. security partners on par with U.S. forces when it comes to their legal obligations to minimize harm to civilians. This means that any nation receiving military support from the United States is bound by the same standards as the U.S. military itself when it comes to protecting civilian lives in conflict zones. This legal requirement is essential to ensure that any actions taken by U.S. allies align with international humanitarian laws. Moreover, earlier this year, the U.S. government passed the Conventional Arms Transfer Policy of 2023. Under this policy, the U.S. State Department is mandated to cease the transfer of arms to countries that employ U.S. weapons in ways that harm civilians. In essence, this creates a clear linkage between U.S. arms sales and the responsible use of those arms by the recipient nations. This approach is designed to ensure that U.S. weapons are not used in ways that result in civilian casualties. It is crucial to emphasize that these policies were developed and enacted in response to past tragic incidents, where the U.S. military's actions in countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria led to significant civilian harm. These experiences underscore the importance of prioritizing the protection of innocent lives during military operations. By adhering to international humanitarian laws and responsible arms transfers, the United States seeks to prevent such tragic errors and uphold the values of protecting civilians during armed conflicts. Notably, three-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Thomas Friedman penned an article for the New York Times titled, "Israel is about to make a terrible mistake." In his piece, Friedman argues that if Israel proceeds hastily with an operation to eliminate Hamas in Gaza without expressing a clear commitment to a two-state solution involving the Palestinian Authority and the cessation of Jewish settlements in the West Bank, it could lead to a grave mistake with devastating consequences for both Israeli and American interests. A critical factor to consider is the political landscape in Israel, particularly the leadership of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu is often characterized as a right-wing extremist, and his government comprises individuals with even more conservative stances. It is this cabinet that is advocating for a forceful approach, including a potential invasion of Gaza, as a means to seek revenge against Hamas. It is essential to clarify that Hamas does not represent all of Palestine, and there are many Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza who aspire to live in peace, embracing values that resonate with those promoted by the U.S. government and its allies. For them, hope for a better future is a powerful aspiration. The majority of the world already recognizes Palestine as an independent state. The fundamental reality of the Middle East conflict remains that both Israelis and Palestinians must find a way to coexist peacefully. This sentiment is one that should be delivered by President Joe Biden to Israel, urging the Israeli government to be held accountable to international humanitarian laws in its actions. The world is watching closely to see if President Biden will have the courage to champion this message and ensure that Israel's actions align with international standards for the protection of civilians in conflict zones. This is a critical moment, and the global community is eager to see how it unfolds.